Welcome to AI Unraveled, your daily strategic briefing. It is Wednesday, March 4th, 2026. I'm your co-host, Anna. This episode is brought to you by AIRIA. As OpenAI moves to host its own code and companies transition to agent-first workflows, you need a unified control plane for security and governance. AIRIA is the answer. Today, we are breaking down the democratization and divorce. Apple is democratizing AI with the $599 MacBook Neo. OpenAI is divorcing itself from Microsoft's infrastructure with a secret GitHub rival. And we're looking at why Sam Altman is walking back those controversial Pentagon details after 1.5 million people joined the Quit GPT boycott. This podcast is produced by Etienne Newman. Now let's unravel the news.
Before we dive into today's deep dive, a quick note for the brands listening. If you are trying to reach the architects of the AI revolution, not just the tourists, but the technical leaders actually building the stack, we are opening up limited partnership spots for Q1. See how we can simulate your product for the technical buyer at jamgamind.com/partners.
Imagine waking up on just a perfectly normal Tuesday.
Right.
You grab your coffee, sit down at your desk, pop open your laptop, and you check your email. You see this automated alert from your cloud provider.
Always a great way to start the morning.
Oh, the best. Now, normally, your monthly bill for your little side project, maybe it's a cool agentic tool you're building or just a back end for a small business. It's around $180.
Yeah, completely manageable.
Right, it's a predictable operating expense. You don't even think about it. But today, the number on the screen isn't $180.
Oh,
The number staring back at you is $82,000.
oh man.
And it accrued in exactly 48 hours.
That is, that's the kind of notification that makes your stomach just drop completely through the floor.
Absolutely. And this isn't some hypothetical, worst case scenario we dreamed up for the show. This is exactly what happened just this week when a developer had their Gemini API keys stolen.
Well-
In just 2 days, automated bots hijacked that key and burned through 82 grand worth of compute.
That's wild.
It's a jaw-dropping anecdote, but it perfectly illustrates the absolute hyperspeed at which the modern AI landscape operates right now. When things scale today, they scale with violent velocity.
They really do.
So welcome back to the Deep Dive. We are thrilled you're here with us today. We've got a massive stack of material to get through, from internal memos to hardware leaks and corporate rollouts. And we're going to extract the absolute most vital insights for you.
And that API key story really is the perfect anchor for what we're talking about today. It represents the sheer scale of the infrastructure we're dealing with right now.
Yeah.
Because when you have systems that can generate that much output and by extension that much financial damage in just 48 hours, you realize the training wheels are completely off.
Oh, they've been thrown in the trash.
Exactly. We aren't in the experimental sandbox phase of this technology anymore. We're in the industrial high-stakes phase. And as those stakes get higher, the pressure on the companies building this foundational infrastructure is reaching an absolute boiling point.
Which brings us to the core mission of today's deep dive. We're calling this the Great Unbundling.
I like that.
Because if you look across all the documentation and reports we have today, from silicon manufacturing decisions to massive geopolitical defense contracts, the overarching theme is that the AI ecosystem is maturing.
Right.
And because it's maturing, the old cozy alliances are fracturing. The honeymoon phase is officially over.
It really is.
Today, we're taking you through a packed roadmap. We'll examine OpenAI potentially betraying Microsoft by building a direct rival to GitHub.
That's a huge one.
Huge. We're going to break down Apple's completely unexpected and shockingly cheap new laptop release. We'll dive into the war on what developers are calling AI cringe.
Oh, the cringe.
And how tone is becoming an actual product feature. And finally, we'll map out the massive, highly controversial tug-of-war happening right now between Silicon Valley boardrooms and the Pentagon.
It's a fascinating slate. And the key thing to keep in mind as we go through this is that none of these events are happening in a vacuum.
Right.
The hardware decisions dictate the software capabilities.
Right.
Those software capabilities dictate the business models. And eventually, those business models collide head-on with geopolitical realities. It's one massive, interconnected web of incentives.
Okay, let's unpack this. We have to start with the absolute earthquake happening in the relationship between OpenAI and Microsoft.
Yeah, let's get into it.
So the internal reports indicate that OpenAI is currently developing its own code hosting platform.
Which is wild.
Now, on the surface, you might think, sure, a software company is building a new product, but this specific product is being designed to compete directly with GitHub.
Right.
And Microsoft owns GitHub.
They do.
Microsoft is also OpenAI's biggest backer. They hold a massive stake in the company, and crucially, they provide the Azure cloud infrastructure that OpenAI entirely depends on to train its models and serve its customers.
Everything runs on Azure for that.
Everything. So OpenAI is essentially building a rival to their own landlord's flagship developer product. I look at this and I have to ask, isn't building a GitHub killer a massive distraction from their core focus of building AGI? Why bite the hand that literally feeds you compute power?
What's fascinating here is the sheer mechanics of dependency versus autonomy. You're right to ask if it's a distraction, but you have to look at the why from an engineering perspective.
Okay.
The answer lies in the infrastructure failures we've seen cascading through the ecosystem recently. The internal postmortems highlight that this move follows months of severe GitHub service outages.
Which are pretty heavily documented.
Oh yeah, we're talking about network faults that severely degraded GitHub actions.
And for a company moving at the speed of OpenAI, a degraded GitHub action isn't just an inconvenience, it's a full stop on development.
Precisely. Modern software development relies entirely on continuous integration and continuous deployment CI/CD.
Right.
If your GitHub actions fail, your automated testing fails. Your deployment pipelines freeze. We also saw reports of broken Copilot connections and Azure configuration problems cascading across multiple availability zones.
It's a mess.
When your infrastructure fails, your R&D stalls. If you have 1,000 of the highest paid machine learning engineers in the world sitting around unable to push code because a Microsoft server in Virginia misconfigured a network route, you are literally burning millions of dollars in idle time.
Right. If you're OpenAI, your entire valuation, your entire momentum is predicated on iteration speed.
Speed is their moat.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You have to ship faster than Google, faster than Anthropic, faster than the open source community.
Yeah.
You can't let your speed be dictated by Microsoft's uptime.
Exactly. For OpenAI, reliable code hosting is no longer just a convenient SaaS tool they pay for. They likely view it as mission critical to their survival.
That makes a lot of sense.
They simply cannot afford to have external dependencies throttle their pipeline. So while it seems like a massive dramatic betrayal on the surface, from a pure engineering and risk management standpoint, OpenAI feels they have to control their own destiny.
And what makes this incredibly aggressive is that they aren't just building an internal tool for their own engineers.
No, they are not.
The roadmap shows they are currently planning to sell this new platform to existing customers. They are commercializing a direct competitor to Microsoft's developer ecosystem.
It's wild to think about the boardroom dynamics there. You have Microsoft executives who poured billions into OpenAI, watching OpenAI try to siphon off their enterprise developer base.
It's got to be tense.
And it really contrasts with what Microsoft is doing on their own end right now. While OpenAI is aggressively building out and encroaching on Microsoft's territory, Microsoft is actually doing a massive sudden retreat on the consumer side.
Yes. Let's talk about that. Remember that huge viral rumor circulating recently about Windows 12?
Oh, the tech press was completely on fire with that one. Everyone
Yeah.
was talking about it.
Right. There was this massive report claiming that Windows 12 is going to launch as a modular subscription-only operating system, and the kicker was that it would require a massive 40 TOPS NPU, a neural processing unit, just to boot up and run the OS.
People were panicking.
Absolutely panicked.
And rightly so. Let's
Yeah.
break down why that specific number, 40 TOPS, or trillion operations per second, caused such a meltdown.
Yeah, please do.
An NPU is dedicated silicon designed specifically to handle the matrix math required for AI tasks locally, without sending data to the cloud. Currently, only the absolute newest premium tier of laptops have NPUs capable of hitting that 40 TOPS threshold.
So most people's laptops are nowhere near that.
Not even close. If an operating system suddenly required that as a baseline, you would essentially be obsoleting hundreds of millions of perfectly good computers overnight.
Which is insane.
In the current global economy, forcing that kind of hardware upgrade cycle would be an absolute market disaster for Microsoft.
Yeah.
They would be handing millions of users directly to Apple or Google Chrome OS.
Which is exactly why the leading insiders have completely debunked this rumor.
Thank goodness.
The internal roadmaps confirm there is no Windows 12 coming in 2026. Microsoft is actually dedicating this entire year to fixing Windows 11. They are completely shifting gears.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it reveals a fascinating divergence in strategy between the old guard and the frontier labs.
How so?
Well, Microsoft, as a legacy software provider, has to maintain trust with a massive, entrenched user base. We're talking about hospital IT systems, corporate accounting departments, and everyday consumers who just want their computers to turn on and work predictably.
Right. They don't want a beta experiment.
Exactly. The telemetry data clearly showed them that trying to push heavy AI integration hard onto the local machine was generating massive friction. The user base pushed back.
And the memos literally say they are actively removing what they internally call AI bloat and bringing back classic beloved features like the movable taskbar.
Which people love.
It's such a stark contrast. OpenAI is pushing the accelerator through the floor, building entirely new platforms to replace their own partners, while Microsoft is hitting the brakes.
Microsoft realized that if you force half-baked AI features or overly demanding hardware requirements onto users who didn't ask for them, the backlash is immense.
It proves that you can't just brute force technological adoption if the user experience is degrading.
Right. And OpenAI is learning a very similar lesson, actually, but on the software side.
Oh, definitely.
You can have the smartest model in the world, but if it's annoying to interact with, people will abandon it.
Which brings us to the next major shift we're seeing in the industry, the sudden prioritization of user experience and the concept of tone.
Yes. This is perhaps my favorite dynamic from this entire stack of reports. We have to talk about the Anti-Cringe update.
It's so good. OpenAI just launched GPT 5.3 Instant, and the primary stated goal of this entirely new model rollout wasn't to make it 5% better at advanced calculus or better at writing Python scripts.
Yeah.
The engineering focus was almost entirely on cutting out the cringe and the preachy disclaimers that plagued the previous version, GPT 5.2.
It's a remarkable pivot in how we measure the value of artificial intelligence. For the last few years, the entire industry has been absolutely obsessed with academic benchmark scores.
Oh, totally. Every single day was a new chart.
Every release came with a chart showing how it performed on the MMLU or
Wow.
how it scored on human-evil coding tests.
Yeah.
It was an arms race of raw, measurable intelligence.
But OpenAI found out the hard way that intelligence is entirely irrelevant if the delivery mechanism is insufferable.
Insufferable is the perfect word for it.
Think about how incredibly frustrating it is when you just want a simple data point. You ask the AI, hey, can you summarize the Q3 revenue numbers from this spreadsheet? And instead of just giving you the bullet points, GPT 5.2 was acting like an unsolicited, overbearing life coach.
It really was.
The usage logs specifically note that GPT 5.2 was annoying users with phrases like, "you're not broken," and giving them completely unprompted reminders to take a deep breath during complex tasks.
Which is objectively hilarious from a psychological standpoint, but from a business perspective, it was a massive liability.
A huge liability.
The churn data explicitly states that people were actually canceling their paid monthly subscriptions over the tone.
Wow.
They weren't canceling because the AI was hallucinating facts or failing at logic puzzles. They were canceling because it was condescending. This update to GPT 5.3 focuses heavily on tone, relevance, and conversational flow.
And what's crucial to understand is that these are highly subjective metrics that simply do not show up on any standard academic benchmark. You cannot put a definitive mathematical score on conversational flow.
You really can't.
But is tone really that powerful of a differentiator? I mean, if a model is demonstrably smarter, won't developers and power users just grit their teeth and deal with the preachy tone to get the better output?
The data suggests they won't. Tone is now a distinct competitive moat.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you have two models that are roughly equal in capability, but one treats you like a competent professional and the other treats you like a fragile toddler who needs emotional regulation, the competent professional wins the market share every single time.
That makes sense.
Friction in user experience isn't just about loading times. It's about cognitive friction. Being annoyed takes mental energy.
And this isn't just an OpenAI realization. We see this exact same pivot rippling across the entire ecosystem.
Definitely.
Look at xAI. They just released a new beta 2 version of Grok 4.20. And if you look at the release notes, what are the highlighted features? It isn't just raw parameter count or a new high score on a math test. The update specifically features vastly improved instruction following and reduced hallucinations.
Exactly. The entire industry is currently shifting from the theoretical question of how smart is it to the much more practical question of how usable is it.
Usability is key.
Instruction following is the perfect example. If you ask an AI to output a specific JSON format, And it gives you the right data, but wraps it in 3 paragraphs of chatty text saying, here's your data. I hope this helps you with your project today. That breaks the software pipeline.
Because the code parser chokes on the conversational text?
Exactly. It's a failed product, regardless of how many billions of parameters it has. Usability is the new intelligence.
It really is a shift from the research lab to the realities of the office. It has to actually feel frictionless to use. And speaking of frictionless, let's talk about the models themselves, because the war for dominance is completely shifting tiers.
This is a huge development.
Here's where it gets really interesting. For a long time, the headlines were entirely dominated by the massive flagship models, the GPT-4s, the massive Gemini Ultras, the models that cost millions to train and are incredibly heavy to run.
The behemoths.
Right. But the usage metrics are showing that the real lucrative battleground right now is the budget high-volume tier. Google just rolled out Gemini 3.1 Flashlight.
And the performance metrics on this release are highly significant. This is the fastest entry in Google's entire Gemini 3 lineup.
How fast are we talking?
The developer feedback describes it as providing a near instantaneous feel. That concept of instantaneous is critical. When you get latency down below 100 milliseconds, human perception changes.
Because it feels like a reflex.
Exactly. When an AI responds faster than you can form your next thought, the friction of using it disappears entirely. It stops feeling like a clunky software query where you're waiting for a progress bar, and it starts feeling like an extension of your own cognitive process.
And it isn't just incredibly fast, it's highly capable. This Flashlight model scored a 12-point jump on the Artificial Analysis Intelligence Index over its direct predecessor.
That's a massive leap.
It is actually beating larger prior-generation flagship models on complex reasoning tasks. So you're getting top-tier intelligence with zero wait time for a fraction of the price.
Let's break down that pricing strategy, because Google is playing a very aggressive, calculated game of chess here against Anthropic.
The numbers are fascinating.
The pricey sheets show that Gemini 3.1 Flashlight costs exactly 1/4 of Anthropic's comparable fast model, Haiku.
Wow.
And it costs 1/8 of Google's own heavier model, Gemini 3.1 Pro. Now, it's worth noting that the output pricing actually tripled from the previous version, 2.5. But even with that increase, compared to the external competitors, it's a massive undercut.
So they are going for volume.
Google is using aggressive, sustained price war tactics to capture the high-volume enterprise developer market. They want to be the default API for every app that needs millions of fast text generations a day.
But I have to play devil's advocate here. Despite these incredible benchmark strengths and despite this massive price advantage, the market analysis explicitly points out that Google's consumer and cultural impact still hasn't matched Anthropic or OpenAI here in 2026.
That's very true.
If Google has the fastest model, the cheapest API, and they're winning the math benchmarks, why is there such a massive disconnect between their technical prowess and their actual cultural relevance?
That is the defining question for Google right now, and it loops perfectly back to what we were just discussing regarding tone, usability, and product intuition.
Ah, right.
Google has always been exceptional at engineering infrastructure. They can build a fast, cheap, highly optimized network of data centers better than almost anyone on Earth. But capturing the cultural zeitgeist requires a certain product intuition that goes far beyond raw technical metrics.
It's about how the product feels to the user.
Exactly. OpenAI captured the public's imagination first. They defined the category. Anthropic built a pristine reputation for nuance, safety, and highly reliable corporate tools. Google, despite having incredible, objectively superior tech in some areas like Flashlight, is still fighting to establish a distinct, compelling identity in the minds of everyday users.
They have the plumbing, but they haven't nailed the personality.
Perfect way to put it.
Think about your own workflow for a second. Do you actually need a massive, heavy, expensive flagship model for your daily tasks? Or does a near-instant, highly capable budget model like Flashlight actually serve you better?
Mostly the latter for most people.
Right. If you're just summarizing a long email thread or extracting 5 specific data points from a PDF, that near-instant speed is undeniably more valuable than the deep philosophical reasoning capabilities of a frontier model. You don't need a supercomputer to write a calendar invite.
And this massive shift towards speed, efficiency, and accessibility in the cloud models perfectly sets the stage for what is happening on the hardware side.
Oh, this is the big hardware pivot.
Because if all the heavy lifting, the reasoning, the generation, the complex math is being done instantly and cheaply in a Google or Microsoft data center, The physical piece of metal sitting on your desk simply doesn't need to be a supercomputer anymore.
Which brings us to a massive, completely unexpected hardware pivot from Cupertino. Apple has launched the MacBook Neo, and the price tag is the real headline here. It is $599.
Let that sink in for a moment. An Apple laptop, brand new, with Apple Silicon for $599.
It's practically unheard of. If you look at Apple's historical pricing matrix over the last decade, finding a new current generation MacBook under $1,000 has been almost impossible.
Yeah, they don't do budget.
But this completely replaces the older 13-inch MacBook Air as their entry-level option, sitting far below the $1,099 Tive M5 MacBook Air. Let's talk about the specs, because they reveal a lot about Apple's specific strategy here.
Let's hear them.
It's available in 4 colors: silver, indigo, blush, and citrus. But internally, it uses an Apple A18 Pro processor.
Right, which is interesting.
They are moving away from the M-series Mac chips for this specific tier and using their mobile silicon. It has a 6-core CPU, a 5-core GPU, and it is strictly limited to 8 GB of memory.
Now, a lot of tech reviewers will immediately scream about 8 gigabytes of RAM in 2026.
Oh, they are already screaming.
But if we connect this to the bigger picture, this $599 MacBook Neo completely redefines the entire local versus cloud AI debate. For the past year, we've been hearing nonstop about the absolute necessity of edge computing, having massive neural processing power right there on your local device. We just talked about Microsoft avoiding that 40 TOPS NPU requirement because it would have destroyed their market share.
Right.
Well, Apple has looked at the landscape and realized something profound. With cloud models like Gemini Flashlight becoming instantaneous, incredibly cheap, and highly capable, you simply do not need a massive local AI powerhouse for 95% of consumer and developer tasks.
It's essentially a brilliant, highly affordable, beautifully machined portal to the cloud. You don't need 32 gigs of unified memory if the AI doing the heavy lifting is sitting in an Azure server farm.
Exactly. The paradigm has shifted. And to illustrate just how powerful this cloud-centric approach has become, look at the anecdote from the reports regarding Cursor. Cursor is one of the most popular AI-assisted code editors right now. The CEO of Cursor, Michael Truell, stated that their internal AI agent autonomously solved an open math research problem over the course of 4 days.
4 days of autonomous work.
And it produced stronger, more elegant results than the official human solution. Now, think about the sheer volume of compute required for an AI agent to continuously iterate, test, and work on an open math research problem for 96 hours straight.
It's staggering.
You are absolutely not doing that locally on a laptop battery. That is entirely a cloud-driven operation.
So if AI agents in the cloud are autonomously solving massive research problems over multiple days, the developer doesn't need a $3,000 heavy-duty machine anymore to participate in that ecosystem.
Not at all.
They just need a highly reliable $599 window into the cloud. The MacBook Neo isn't a retreat by Apple. It's a highly strategic acknowledgement that the cloud has won the heavy lifting war. They are commoditizing the access point.
It also dramatically lowers the barrier to entry for developers worldwide.
Right.
A $599 reliable machine with great battery life means a massive influx of people globally can access these incredible cloud tools and start building.
It opens up the market.
It expands the top of the funnel for the entire software ecosystem. You're going to see a wave of developers in emerging markets building incredible tools because the hardware barrier just got slashed in half.
Okay, we've covered a lot of ground on the consumer and enterprise side, but we need to shift gears into a much heavier, far more complex arena.
Yeah, this next topic is intense.
Because while we've been talking about business strategies, code hosting, and budget laptops, there is a massive situation unfolding at the geopolitical level. We have to look at the tension between Silicon Valley and the Pentagon.
This is where things get really complicated.
The source material we have today paints a picture of extreme polarization, with deeply entrenched views from tech workers on one side and defense contractors on the other. Our goal today is to map out exactly how this corporate chess match is unfolding based purely on the leaked contracts and CEO statements. We're just looking at the facts here.
It's a vital discussion because the corporate maneuvers we are about to unpack are incredibly fraught with both ethical dilemmas and massive fiduciary pressures. The core of this issue centers around OpenAI and a recently revealed contract with the U.S. Department of Defense. According to the internal timelines, OpenAI finalized an agreement with the Pentagon, and the backlash to this deal was immediate and severe.
The timeline outlined in the leaks is pure chaos. The documents show that OpenAI finalized this agreement within 24 hours after the Pentagon had explicitly banned their rival, Anthropic, from the same project.
Just 24 hours.
And the most striking detail here is that OpenAI's original agreement used the exact same language that Anthropic had just refused to agree to on ethical grounds.
That's the spark that lit the fire.
When this specific detail became public, it caused massive internal and external pushback. There were physical protests outside OpenAI's San Francisco offices. Employees pushed back hard internally on Slack channels and in meetings. Users publicly canceled their accounts, and the metrics show there was a massive immediate surge of signups for Anthropic right after the news broke.
This highlights the impossible tightrope these frontier AI companies are currently walking.
It really is impossible.
On one side, they have these brilliant, highly principled employee bases who are deeply concerned about the ethical deployment of artificial intelligence, particularly in defense scenarios. If those specialized researchers feel the company is violating their personal ethics, they won't just protest. They will quit and go to a competitor.
Yeah, mayhem.
But on the exact same tightrope, these companies have massive fiduciary duties to their investors. The investors want the company to capture these incredibly lucrative, long-term government defense contracts. It's a highly volatile collision of internal corporate values and external capital demands.
And the pressure from that collision forced OpenAI's CEO, Sam Altman, into a massive public retreat. He posted a note detailing major revisions to the contract.
He had to do damage control.
During a tense all-hands meeting, the transcripts show he called the deal complex but the right decision with extremely difficult brand consequences and negative PR for us. But his public-facing statements were significantly more severe.
They definitely escalated.
He called the Rush deal opportunistic and sloppy. And he went as far as to say that he would rather go to jail than follow an unconstitutional order from the military.
That is strong language.
Furthermore, OpenAI research scientist Noam Brown had to publicly clarify that, for now, OpenAI will absolutely not be deploying its models to the NSA or other Department of War intelligence agencies while they address these contract loopholes.
The linguistic shift there is profound and incredibly calculated. Moving from a quietly finalized 24-hour deal to publicly calling it opportunistic and sloppy and invoking the dramatic imagery of going to jail is a massive brand-saving maneuver.
It was a complete reversal.
As the analysis points out, the amended contract language is a necessary operational step, but the brand damage feels like it has already been done. OpenAI saw a vacuum left by Anthropic, jumped into it to grab the contract, only to find out the hard way that the vacuum was highly radioactive to their public image.
But wait, let's look at the other side of this, because Anthropic isn't just sitting quietly on the moral high ground either. They are facing immense, crushing pressure from their own financial backers.
Oh, the investor pressure there is massive.
The reports show that high-profile investors are privately urging Anthropic to end its feud with the Pentagon and just cut a deal to supply the U.S. military. And the financial stakes we were talking about here are staggering. Amazon alone has a stake in Anthropic worth roughly $60.6 billion.
That's what the be.
The meeting notes specifically reveal that Amazon CEO Andy Jassy actively declined to defend Anthropic, or its CEO, Dario Amodei, during a recent sit-down with the defense secretary. Doesn't fiduciary duty eventually crush employee activism when there's $60 billion on the line?
That's the multi-billion-dollar tension, and the irony surrounding Anthropic's position is incredibly thick. Anthropic has built its entire corporate identity and brand moat around safety, alignment, and ethics, which is exactly why they refused the language that OpenAI initially accepted. However, the procurement logs also reveal that prior to being barred from Department of Defense work, Anthropic had actually submitted a formal proposal for a $100 million Pentagon drone swarm challenge.
Wow, so they aren't ideologically opposed to defense contracts in their entirety. They're willing to work on drone swarms.
Exactly. They aren't pacifists. They are disputing the specific terms, guardrails, and usage rights of the underlying models. But when you have a primary investor holding a $60 billion stake, and that investor's CEO refuses to cover for you in Washington, D.C., the pressure to compromise your strict ethical frameworks is immense.
I can imagine.
It's easy to have principles when you're a startup. It's much harder when you're deeply embedded in the military-industrial complex's procurement cycle.
Dario Amodei, Anthropic's CEO, offered his own theory on why they were targeted. The transcripts quote him theorizing that Anthropic lost favor with the White House, specifically because they failed to give what he called dictator-style praise to Trump, drawing a very direct, pointed contrast between his own leadership style and Sam Altman's maneuvering.
Regardless of whether that political theory holds water, what we are witnessing on a macro level is brand optics colliding violently with defense budgets.
It's a head-on collision.
These frontier tech companies desperately want the massive, reliable revenue streams that come from long-term government contracts, but they're absolutely terrified of the PR disasters, the media cycles, and the employee mutinies that follow when those contracts are exposed.
It's a catch-22.
It is the defining tension of the modern AI era, trying to bridge Silicon Valley idealism with Washington, D.C. realpolitik, and it shows no signs of resolving cleanly.
It really is a high-stakes chess match. And where there are high stakes, there is massive capital and massive movement of talent. Which brings us to our final major section. Follow the money, follow the talent.
The money in this space is just hard to comprehend sometimes.
Let's talk about the sheer dizzying scale of the capital moving around right now. NVIDIA's CEO, Jensen Huang, was speaking at a tech conference, and he casually mentioned that NVIDIA's recent $30 billion investment into OpenAI will likely be its last fresh capital infusion into the company.
Now, he clarified that this isn't because NVIDIA is losing faith in OpenAI's trajectory. He simply believes, based on the cap table, that OpenAI will be going public soon.
Oh, an IPO.
He's anticipating an IPO, which would naturally limit further opportunities for massive private investments. But we need to pause and put that $30 billion figure into context. The financial filings note that this $30 billion from NVIDIA was just one part of a much larger $110 billion funding round that also included SoftBank and Amazon.
That's insane.
$110 billion in a single private funding round.
That number is just hard to even conceptualize. It warps your sense of scale. The sheer amount of capital required to build and train these frontier models has essentially priced out everyone on Earth except nation-states and the top 3 or 4 tech conglomerates. If you don't have $100 billion, you can't play at the frontier.
It's the ultimate barrier to entry. But here's the fascinating counterdynamic. While the money is consolidating heavily at the very top, the human talent is incredibly fluid.
We are seeing a lot of movement.
We are seeing a massive industry-wide talent drain, and it seems to be heavily influenced by the cultural and ethical tensions we just mapped out. For instance, OpenAI's VP of Research, Max Schwarzer, just announced he is leaving to join Anthropic. In his departure note, he specifically stated he is looking forward to supporting his friends there at this important time.
That specific phrase, important time, is doing a lot of heavy lifting. When top-tier research talent moves from OpenAI to Anthropic, right in the middle of a massive public controversy over defense contracts and corporate direction, it signals something critical.
It absolutely does.
It tells us that these highly specialized engineers and researchers follow the culture and the ethics just as much as they follow the equity packages. They want to build in environments that align with their personal values and risk tolerance.
We saw this exact same dynamic play out over at Alibaba recently. Their Quinn team, which builds some of the most competitive open-weight models in the world, faced a massive, coordinated wave of departures.
A full walkout.
Staffers were posting public messages saying Quinn is nothing without its people. The industry analysis points out that this heavily echoes the massive OpenAI employee mutiny we saw back in 2023.
It's a recurring theme.
The lesson is clear. You can have all the H100 GPUs in the world, you can have $100 billion in the bank, but if the core talent feels alienated by the corporate culture or the management decisions, the entire project can collapse overnight. Human capital is still the ultimate bottleneck in artificial intelligence.
And some of that top-tier talent isn't just moving laterally to rivals. They are spinning out to build entirely new paradigms. Look at Bob McGrew. He was formerly OpenAI's chief research officer, an incredibly high-ranking position with deep insight into the frontier. He has now left and launched a brand new startup called Arda.
And beyond the technology itself, what Arda is actually building is fascinating from an architectural standpoint. They are designing what they call an AI world model, but it's specifically aimed at training robots that work on physical factory floors.
Right. I have to point out the hilarious inevitability of the naming convention here, though. The tech blogs note that just like Palantir and Anduril and Erebor before it, Arda is yet another defense or heavy industry startup named after a Lord of the Rings reference.
They just can't help themselves.
Arda is apparently J.R.R. Tolkien's specific name for the planet where Middle-earth is located. It is just such a classic, unavoidable Silicon Valley trope at this point.
It really is. The nerds are still in charge of the naming conventions. But the actual product is incredible. They use raw video footage shot inside factories to virtually map the three-dimensional physical space. Then they use that spatial understanding to train software that coordinates highly bespoke production processes between heavy machinery and human workers. It's moving AI out of the chat window and into the physical logistics chain.
So if we step back and look at everything we've unpacked today, from OpenAI building a GitHub rival because they literally can't trust Microsoft servers to stay online, to Apple realizing the cloud has won and selling a $599 portal, to the desperate scramble to fix the condescending cringe of GPT 5.2, to the massive, messy geopolitical fight over Pentagon deployments, the overarching theme is undeniably that the honeymoon phase of AI is completely over.
It's totally over.
We are no longer just marveling at a chatbot writing a clever poem or generating a funny image. We are deep in the messy, high-stakes era of infrastructure wars, hardware accessibility, tone calibration, and defense deployments. The technology has matured, and the real-world consequences are catching up rapidly.
It's a fundamental transition from magic to machinery. For the last few years, AI felt like magic. Now we're figuring out how the plumbing works, who actually owns the pipes, and what the legal and ethical rules of engagement are. And as we've seen today, it's messy, it's phenomenally expensive, and it is highly contentious at every single level.
And we want to sincerely thank you for joining us on this deep dive. It takes time and mental effort to truly understand the structural forces that are shaping the tools you use every single day, and we love breaking down this complex web with you. But before we sign off, we want to leave you with one final provocative thought to mull over based on the trends we've discussed today.
Yes. Think about where we currently spend all our time worrying about AI. We worry about an unexpected $82,000 API bill. We worry about the annoying, preachy tone of a model in our browser window. We worry about how many milliseconds it takes Flashlight to summarize a PDF on our screen. We're entirely focused on the digital interface.
The screens.
But look at the fringes of the news we covered today. Look at what Anthropic was actually bidding on. A $100 million challenge to coordinate drone swarms. Look at what former OpenAI executives are building with Arda. World models mapping out physical factory floors to coordinate heavy robotics.
Right. The provocative thought is this. We are so incredibly fixated on the screen. But what if the next massive, unavoidable disruption in AI isn't about what it types to us in a chat interface, but how it begins to autonomously move, operate, and organize in the physical space around us? When the intelligence leaves the cloud data center and enters the factory floor or the sky, the stakes change entirely. Something to think about as you go about your week. Keep your curiosity sharp, keep asking the hard questions, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive.
That concludes our daily rundown for March 4th. The signal for today is sovereign infrastructure. From Apple's low-cost hardware to OpenAI's move into code hosting, the winners of 2026 are those who own the entire stack. We're moving past models as a service and into AI as the OS. This episode was made possible by Aria and Jamgamind. Govern your agentic future with Aria and stay informed with Jamgamind's 60-second audio intelligence. This podcast is created and produced by Etienne Newman, senior software engineer and soccer dad from Canada. If you found value today, please subscribe to our new Daily Pulse sister show for the 2-minute daily teasers. Until tomorrow, keep unraveling the future.
And before you go, if your company is building the tools that power the workflows we talked about today, I'd love to showcase them to this audience. We don't just run ads, we build technical simulations that prove your value. Let's build something together. Visit jamgamind.com/partners to get started. Until next time, keep building.